Hamstring Activation for Pelvic Control test. What I recommend, or how we use this test, depends on a couple of things. First of all, if somebody is having deep glute pain or like almost like sciatic or pain near their sits bone area or tailbone area, this test can be helpful. If somebody has like chronic tension or tightness in their hip flexors or quads even, or they feel like their adductor region, their groin region is always very tight, that can also signify that we might want to bring this test into play. And then if there's trouble for you ladies with internal rotation or that deep pelvic floor lengthening, engaging the obturator muscles, having the deeper hip rotators work separate from the glutes or separate from the hamstrings, being able to tell, hey, when are my glutes needing to work versus when my hamstrings are going to be needing to work. If you struggle with any of those types of things, then this test can come in very helpful. I have this on super slow speed. I think it's like half speed. So it'll be a little slower. And what I want you to think about is starting in this literal 90-90 position. Okay. So feet are against the wall. What we're doing here is you can see that I'm trying to do just a little posterior pelvic tilt here. So it's a very subtle movement. I'm not trying to lift my hips up off the ground just yet. But with this posterior pelvic tilt, what I'm trying to do to initiate the movement is coming from pulling down on my heels on the wall and just activating my hamstrings here to tilt my pelvis. So it's almost like my tailbone is going up towards the ceiling because my hamstrings are engaging. Let me back it up a little bit. So first step, pulling down with the heels on the wall, feeling activation in your hamstring, and then being able to tilt, feeling your hamstring, but not feeling like your glutes or your piriformis area is like tightening to help you. And also not feeling like you're holding your breath or bearing down to help you. So that's phase one. Let's say you can do that well, right? So you feel your hamstrings activating, you don't feel glutes, you don't feel pain, you don't feel that piriformis tightening or the tailbone tightening. Then what we want to do is start doing that little posterior tilt and adding a hold to it. 5 seconds, 10 seconds. As you add that hold, can you still just feel the hamstrings? Or do the glutes or piriformis start to kick in as you get a little bit more fatigued? Or does pain start to come as you get a little bit more fatigued? That is all going to give us good information, right? Because if you're doing it and you can do it okay for a couple of seconds, but as you hold longer, you start to have pain, that tells us, okay, this is where we need to start with your body. We don't yet have the endurance to hold for time. So we need to just keep it in the small motion. We need to do a couple of second holds and then just more reps to build the tolerance, to train those muscles on what you're trying to get them to achieve. Now, as it gets easier, back up a little bit. As it gets easier, let's say you can hold 5 to 10 seconds, symptoms feel fine, you feel pretty solid and controlled, then you can start lifting a little bit higher and making sure that as you do so, you're not shifting one side to the other, right? We don't want to favor one leg. We want it to feel pretty even, pretty stable. And so making sure you can do that without shifting as you get a little bit higher into that motion. Now, this is still going to be pretty hamstring dominant, okay? When we're progressing through this though, let's say up to this point, everything is feeling good, then we want to start engaging the hamstrings and working the hips up higher into more of a bridge-like position. That way we can start getting into a little bit more of a hip extension. It's okay to start feeling your glutes, obviously, as you lift your hips up higher, but still, we don't want to feel like we're favoring one side, and we don't want this to be feeding into symptoms. If it does feed into symptoms, or if you start to feel a lot more like quad or hip flexor work as you start to lift your hips up higher, then we want to start using our adductors next to help our hamstrings stabilize the pelvis as we're working through hip extension. So this is where you can add a little foam roller or yoga block or pillow between the legs, and you're going to activate the hamstrings first still. but then you'll put a little squeezing pressure on the roller or whatever's between the legs as you lift up to try to engage those adductors and downregulate the hip flexors or the quads. Then again, as this gets easier, working on getting a little bit higher into the bridge motion. I don't know if I show it here. I might not show it in this actual video, but some clients, I will have them literally progress into like almost a full bridge. So a pretty decent range of motion. It's at that point, obviously okay to feel the glutes. It's okay to feel the piriformis. It's okay to feel the adductors. We're still not trying to feel it be hip flexor dominant, quad dominant, or cause pain in your pain areas. The other thing to keep in mind is what we're doing breathing wise. Okay, we don't want to be bearing down. We don't want to be holding our breath. We don't want to be clenching our glutes, right? We want our glutes to contract when we need to go up and relax and lengthen when we need to come down. So we don't want to keep it super tight around the tailbone area or the glute region either. One thing I forgot to mention, when you're just going through the little tilt and you're working on getting the activation down comfortably, holding that little activation, holding that little posterior tilt and trying to do a 360 breath is a great starting point to make sure you can still expand into the back. You can expand into those deeper hip muscles and you don't lose the control of the hamstring itself. And so for you ladies that might have pain earlier in this test, using your breath right before you get to that point of pain is a great way to kind of downregulate and lengthen the muscles so that they don't start to just shorten and seize up on you. But also using this little initial activation can become a tool that you now use after you're done working out to help with your cool down, or 4 to 6 hours later if pain starts coming on, or a day later if you start to feel your symptoms. That's where you can lie down and just do a couple of minutes of this to get those deeper muscles to lengthen and open while we add a little bit more stability to the pelvis with the hamstrings and the adductors and other areas that are useful for pelvic stability. So, I know a lot of you, especially early on, really find the 360 breathing and just being more mindful of that to be helpful for symptoms. Keep using that and feel free to use that in something like this just to help it translate into a different position and a deeper activation of some of those muscles. And again, for any of you ladies, if you're trying this, if there's a little bit of discomfort or symptom irritation the first like 3 or 4 reps that you do this, give it 5, 6, 7 reps to see if your body just needs time to get the hang of it. Sometimes your brain is just trying to figure out what your body is trying to do, and it can be a little challenging. So if you do a few more reps and things start to calm down, that means great. You can keep doing it. If pain is staying under a 5 out of 10, great. You can keep doing it. It's not damaging anything unnecessarily. If you do more reps and pain increases or becomes sharp or stabbing, or it's, a 6, 7, 8 out of 10, that's your brain and your body being like, nope, I'm not ready for this. This is not what I'm asking for right now. So don't push through that. Honor what the symptoms are trying to tell you, just so that you can kind of play around with how much we need to push our body to break through that barrier versus not doing too much to just overstimulate it and increase the pain when we don't need to. Show you a little bit more of just like the anatomy education. So if we're thinking about our pelvis, so the backside of our body, tailbone's here, sits bones are here. Hamstring attaches to these sits bones here, okay? So if you think about this angle of your body, hamstrings are here. When we're lying on our back with our legs up at 90 degrees, this is where it's at, okay? So when we're pulling down on our feet and activating our hamstrings are what is pulling the pelvis up to posteriorly tilt, okay? So when we get this motion, it helps open up these deeper muscles, okay? So if this is start, sorry if this is a little confusing to see, this is the start, and we're now pulling up and moving the pelvis up this way, we're creating more space right there, which is where a lot of us have either deeper weakness or tightness or just limitations with motor control for everything else around the pelvis, front or back. So if we can free that up without like gripping around the tailbone or without using, you know, the bigger muscles here to compress, awesome. That's a way to just like give this freedom for the pelvis, tailbone, sacrum area. And it can also be really helpful with SI joint discomfort. I forgot to mention that earlier. So keeping that in mind, then obviously as we're activating the hamstrings, pulling up and then lifting the hips up more, so now we're like going into more hip extension. That's where we do expect the glutes and everything like in the backside to be helping. They're helping to do the rest of the motion. We just want to make sure that we have that foundation activated first to support stability wise through everything else. Okay. And then on the flip side, when we're talking about like front side tightness or discomfort, or for any of you people that feel like your femur shifts a little bit forward in your socket. So you either have pain bringing your leg all the way behind you if you're walking or running, going up inclines or stairs, or you're just constantly feeling restricted in the front. That's where, as we start using the adductor, so the adductors are in the front, they attach in this region and then come down to the rest of the thigh this way. So as we add that adductor stability, it's hard because this is so mobile. But when we've rotated things up and then activated the adductors, it almost does this to provide stability to the pelvis. Okay, so we've opened up the backside of the hip first. And then with the front part, we've now added a little bit of stability here, almost at essentially like the bottom of the bucket, right? We now have good control here. Our breathing is working for us up top so that everything deeper, that bucket is solid, and it now takes the workload off the other muscles that were coming up here trying to support your hip as it's moving, because the adductors are stabilizing in a better way. So that is where, you know, later in the test when we're bringing the foam roller or whatnot into the mixture, it helps get not just the backside to be stable but the front side. And our adductor magnus, it helps with hip extension as well. Right? So even though it pulls our thighs inward and helps us squeeze our thighs, one of the adductor muscles also helps us lift our hip into extension. We need that for jogging, running, hip thrust, hinges, like all of those extension-based exercises.